The Showtime Lakers are often thought of a team that, quote, helped save the NBA, as the emergence of megastars and lovable personalities such as Larry Bird and Magic Johnson helped change the narrative on a struggling league that was riddled with drug problems. It was also often thought of as unmarketable into the multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that we see today. Magic Johnson, the charismatic leader with an infectious smile, and Larry Bird, the humble superstar with an unrivaled competitive spirit. Winning a total of 8 championships and 6 MVPs combined throughout the span of the 80s, Bird and Johnson delivered fans performances that would go on to echo throughout basketball history on a nightly basis. However, while the good side of these two legendary players and their respective teams who helped save the NBA are idolized in our little succinct of humanity, what about their more shadowy side, the darker side to their colossal egos that they don't want you to know or remember? Especially for Magic Johnson and the Showtime Lakers, who former Showtime Laker player Michael Cooper put it, were a team full of whores, and Magic Johnson was the biggest whore. See, while I did find myself in awe while learning of the success and greatness that Magic Johnson and the Lakers of the 80s achieved, I was in even more awe when I learned of some of the more promiscuous, jaw-dropping acts that took place behind the scenes of the show being put on at the Staples Center. And that is what we're going to be taking a look at today, the shadow side of Magic Johnson and the Showtime Los Angeles Lakers. Before we begin though, quick shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. SeatGeek, aka the best app for anyone looking to purchase tickets to NBA games or any live events, with views from the seats before you buy them, and real-time best ticket prices on every seat combined with an additional $20 off your first order when you use the promo code SDC at checkout. SeatGeek is by far the best way to get tickets to games or any other live event. If you don't already have the app by now, I'll leave the link so you can download it down in the description box below. Before I was married, I truly lived the bachelor's life. I'm no Wilt Chamberlain, but as I traveled around NBA cities, I was never at a loss for female companionship. I confess that after I arrived in LA in 1979, I did my best to accommodate as many women as I could, most of them through unprotected sex. This quote was from Magic Johnson detailing how he came about to attract the HIV/AIDS virus during his career. I did the best to accommodate as many women as I could. That singular phrase sums up the entirety of not just Magic Johnson's life off the court, but the lives of every member of the Showtime Los Angeles Lakers, from the then owner of the franchise, Jerry Buss, all the way down to the 15th man on the roster. None, however, were more into the giving spirit when it came to young, influenceable women than Buss and Johnson. Dr. Buss seemingly dated a handful of new, barely able to drive girls every week, luring them in with promises of getting them onto their feet in LA, treating them to fancy dinners, and buying them a new pair of shoes in order to procure their companionship. Buss even going as far to keep a record book with photos of his conquest to show off to his friends after the fact. Which, as scumbaggy as that might sound, he wasn't completely heartless with the women he saw, as Buss did pay for most, if not all, of their college expenses and was also happy to oblige with any other financial expenses that they may need assistance with. Not only that though, Buss even stayed in contact with some of them to make sure that everything was alright with them after he had moved on to the next young thing. He wasn't a bad guy, just a bit eccentric. And the eccentricness and promiscuity of Buss could even be seen as child's play when it comes to Magic Johnson and his relationships with women. See, while Magic Johnson takes pride in the fact that he's been able to go his whole life without the use of alcohol or drugs of any kind, that's probably only because Magic had a different way of coping with the difficulties of life. Women. An exorbitant amount of women. Imagine this scenario for a second. You and a bunch of your friends take a trip to New York, pull up to a hotel, and in the lobby you find a gaggle of women all dying for the chance to throw themselves at you. And not only that, but after getting through said group of women and making it to your room, you're greeted with hundreds of different perfume-scented cards, each with a different woman's phone number inscribed. Now, if you're a guy like me, this is a scenario that goes beyond your wildest imaginations. For Magic Johnson and the rest of the Showtime Lakers, though, this was often just another Tuesday in the office. See, no matter what the city or hotel that the Lakers stayed at least 40 to 50 women would be in the lobby of their hotels waiting for the players. More specifically, waiting for Magic Johnson. And as Magic Johnson said himself, he felt it was his duty to accommodate as many of them as possible. So Magic would simply take an armful of women back to his hotel room for a bit before sending them on their way. Unlike Dr. Bus though, Magic had no intentions of checking in on these women later down the line. For Magic, it was simply on to the next. And speaking of which, the fun wouldn't stop there. See, after accommodating the groupies from the hotel lobby, Magic typically called a couple of the perfume-scented numbers that were waiting for him in his hotel room for a post-groupie pick-me-up before heading to practice. Yeah, this was a typical day for Magic Johnson before practice. After practice, Magic once again will link up with a handful of more women who will be waiting for him outside of whatever facility the Lakers were currently practicing in before heading out for the night to the club with some teammates who stated that Magic would always have at least 20 to 30 women draped along his arms on the way to the club. And as you can probably guess by now, after a night of clubbing, Magic would take a few more women with him back to his hotel room, do the deed, send them on their way, and then call it a day, only for the process to repeat itself the next day and every other day throughout the entire 82-game-long NBA season, meaning that on average, Magic Johnson was sleeping with a minimum of 12 to 15 women per day. And even if we take the low end of that, say 12 women per day, and say instead of sleeping with that many people every day, that he only slept with anyone at all 182 days of the year, so about half the year instead of the full year, that still gives Magic a body count of well over 2,000 women per year. And that's looking at the lowest possible scale, with the high end of the scale being anywhere from around 5,000 to 6,000 women per year. Holy shit. And if you're taken aback by the sheer number of women that Magic presumably slept with in his life, well, you're in for a real shock once you learn of what took place during some of the parties that Magic Johnson would throw at his LA mansion, where he would invite women by the dozens, from Hollywood actresses to strippers to college students. There would be women who had encounters with athletes before and bragged about the athletes that they've been with. And then there are also women who were a lot more discreet. Women for whom this was a very secret life they would not want the rest of the world, particularly their significant others and husbands, to know of. Because if you were a woman attending one of Magic Johnson's notorious house parties, being down for anything was a requirement. As one of Magic's former teammates put it, by the stroke of midnight, everyone had to be busy. If a guy complained that a girl wasn't getting busy, Magic would show up and make her get busy. And should she refuse, she'd be kicked out and barred from attending any future festivities. How crazy is that? Can you imagine what would happen if this story broke today? Fortunately for Magic and the rest of his teammates though, this was a time well before social media and phones with cameras, so they didn't have to worry about footage or pictures getting leaked to the masses. Unfortunately for Magic and the Showtime Lakers though, they had one of the dumbest humans to ever exist on their team, Mark Landsberger. Now, when I say Mark Landsberger was one of the dumbest humans to ever exist, I don't say that to be mean in any way. It's simply, well, the truth. Mark Landsberger is historically dumb. Michael Cooper. Mark was a nice kid, but he was dumb like a post. I'm guessing he could not walk and chew gum simultaneously. Lakers VP of Banking. I hired Mark to give an hour-long rebounding course at a summer basketball camp. He ran out of words in 5 minutes. Lakers assistant coach. And my personal favorite, on his first day of practice with the Lakers, Landsberger, with the dead serious face, asked, "Do you guys run any rebounding plays?" He was dumb, which is why none of his teammates should have been surprised in the slightest bit when Landsberger, despite sleeping around on his wife with plenty of women, outed the entire Lakers roster to his wife for their not so kosher behind the scenes behaviors. The parties with groupies, the hotel lobby groupies, the scented phone card groupies, the post-practice groupies, the post-game groupies, and even the post-groupie groupies. Landsberger, completely unforced by the way, told his wife everything. One man, D'Angelo rustled an entire NBA roster, resulting in all of the housewives from the Lakers players discovering about their husbands' infidelities. Granted, upon hearing firsthand from Landsberger of what their husbands had been doing behind their backs, most of the wives said that they had already had a strong suspicion that that was the case, and some were even fine with the husband sleeping around since they said it was just one less time they'd have to do him any favors, which I suppose is good because I don't think the players on the Lakers could have stopped living their swinger lifestyle even if they tried. It's what happens when women aren't just offered to you on a nightly basis, but thrust upon you on a nightly basis. Which leads us to the creme de la creme, the piece de resistance, the pinnacle of all debauchery, the Forum Club, aka the Staples Center's exclusive brothel. The Lakers, while they may have been the team whose players' libidos most closely resembled that of a rabbit's, weren't the only team filled with guys looking for a good time, as players from opposing teams relished the chance to travel to LA and take on the Lakers. Not necessarily for a chance of beating one of the best teams in the league at the time, but instead because of what came afterwards, the party at the Forum Club. Immediately after the final buzzer sounded, players from both teams could hardly wait to hit the lockers and shower. Role and bench players especially knew that they had to be quick after the games because of what awaited after them at the Forum Club. A buffet of women from which even players from opposing teams could have their picking. Only catch is they had to get there before Magic. Once Magic arrived, all bets were off. And though players did make up a majority of the male figures in the Forum Club, players weren't the only ones who attended these parties. Musicians, artists, actors, football players, baseball players, anyone who was anyone in the LA area would often drop by as well, for the women, for the drinks, and for the drugs. All of the drugs. Now, when most people think of drugs in the NBA, our mind takes us back to the 70s, before Magic and Bird, when the league was riddled with players addicted to cocaine. And while the NBA did have its most public battle with drugs back in the 70s, you'd be misguided to believe that with the emergence of Bird and Johnson that the NBA's narcotic problem magically disappeared, especially on the Lakers. If anyone says Lakers didn't have guys who did blow, it's laughable. There was never a shortage of cocaine. Michael Cooper, Lakers guard and cocaine user. After the games at the Forum Club, the use of cocaine was especially prevalent, with most of the waiters even doubling as cocaine dealers, and the bathrooms being the main place of consumption. Matter of fact, drug use on the Showtime Lakers had gotten to be such a problem that the Lakers advisor, the great Jerry West, hired a couple of private investigators to follow around one particular Lakers player to discover whether or not they had a drug use problem. And the player that West instructed that PI to follow was all-star guard Norm Nixon. Now, I could write a whole nother video on Norm Nixon's relationship and problems with Magic Johnson, Jerry West, and the entirety of the Los Angeles Lakers, but the main thing you guys need to know is that from day one, Nixon was jealous of the attention and notoriety that Magic was getting. He envied Magic Johnson, and that envy not only caused rifts between Norm and the rest of the team, but it also caused a massive rift between Norm and West, to the point where West had been vying with the Lakers brass to remove Nixon from the roster for years. And as it turned out, this stunt by West will be one of the final straws necessary to make that dream come true. But that story is actually going to have to wait for another time. This whole Showtime Los Angeles Lakers behind the scenes thing, it's a pretty long story. There's a lot of details I gotta get through. So with that being said, if you want to see the next part, make sure that you not only like the video, but also subscribe to the channel. I got that video plus a lot more NBA stories and knowledge of things in the past that I had to share with you guys. So once again, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on those videos. But until next time, keep getting the buckets, Team STC. and I'm out of here. Peace!